I went to Busch Gardens, Williamsburg for the first ever time exactly 1 week ago today. So today, I'm going to be ranking all of their roller coasters. Ranking all these coasters were definitely hard because all of their coasters are fantastic. So to start off, at my number 10 spot, we have Grover's Alpine Express, the park's kiddie coaster. Now, it is a kiddie coaster, so not much to say here. It's just a kiddie coaster, so, not really any forces, airtime, or anything like that. But it's a good ride for the kids. Now, a lot of you guys might be surprised by this, but at my number 9 spot, we have Tempesto. Now, usually people have it higher in their list, but in my opinion, I think it was pretty an uncomfortable ride, especially because of the restraints. The comfort collars are really not comfortable, and it was a very intense ride. Now, I did only get one ride on it because my first ride on it was not very good, and if you watch my reactions, which I'm showing right now, you can tell that, it's not a very comfortable ride. That is why it's at my number 9 spot. At my number 8 spot, we have Loch Ness Monster, The Legend Lives On. Now, this coaster was renovated in May of 2024, and you can definitely see the difference and tell the difference. Now, I didn't ride it before the renovation, but I've watched on-ride POVs, on-ride reactions and stuff, so it definitely looks a lot rougher, or not like a lot rougher, but definitely rougher than it is now. And the theming wasn't as good. Now, the roughness is really just jankiness, in my opinion. I don't think it's really that rough. Sure, it's a janky ride, and it is a little bit bumpy on like the loops and stuff, but still a really good ride. The theming is on point. Such good theming, probably the best theming at the park. The park has overall such good theming. Every single spot in the park has some sort of theming, with different countries. So outside of the park, because I'm talking about Loch Ness Monster right now, but Loch Ness Monster has really good theming, definitely kind of keeps up with the park because, like I said, the park has really good theming too. But Nessie has really good theming. They have an old car from before it was renovated. They have a tunnel. Now, I will say with the tunnel that they have animations of Nessie opening its mouth, but I wish they're a little bit longer because when you're going that fast, you really can't see it. And if you've been on the ride, then you kind of know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, then you're just going to have to trust me with that because I do have an on-ride reaction that I'm showing you right now, so should be able to see it a little bit. But it was still a super fun ride that if you go to Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, you should definitely check out. At my number 7 spot, we have the park's GCI wooden coaster Invader. This was a very fun wooden coaster, not very rough. I think the park was going towards a family coaster, sort of, because it's kind of more family oriented. That's kind of what it feels like. Not like a super intense GCI Woody, but super fun ride, not too rough. Definitely had some good flow ejector airtime moments. I was looking at on-ride POVs and didn't look like it had that much airtime, but it really does when you're on it in real life. It's a super fun ride, like I said, more towards families, but it's such a fun ride. It's just overall a fun ride with good airtime. At my number 6 spot, we have the park's indoor new for 2023 coaster, Dark Coaster. This was a very fun coaster. Now you might be surprised that I have it this high on my list. This was a super fun coaster. I wasn't really expecting that forceful of a launch. When you're actually on it, the launchers are very powerful. You wouldn't think that the launchers would be that powerful for a family coaster. And the trains are so cool. They're like jet skis or snowmobiles. That's what I mean, snowmobiles. That's what the trains are shaped like. So you can either hold on to the lap bar, which has like a handlebar, or you can hold on to the actual bars, kind of like you're on a snowmobile. So it's a really fun ride. And like I said, the launches are so powerful. It's really fun. The theming is really good. And if you're going to Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, I know I rode it twice. You definitely gotta go on it. Now I know it always has a wait. It's always gonna have a wait. But when you're actually waiting in line for it, it's really not that bad. It always is saying a 50-minute wait. The time that I went there wasn't too crowded, and luckily, because I went on a weekday and it wasn't that crowded. But yeah, you definitely gotta ride it if you go to Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. At my number 5 spot, we have the park's inverted coaster, Alpengeist. This is a super intense inverted coaster. Now, the first drop is one of the tallest of any inverted coaster. I'm pretty sure it could be the tallest inverted coaster in the world, 197 feet. Now, the one thing that's kind of weird is that they could have made it a hyper coaster if they just made it a little bit taller by 3 feet. 3 feet was all it would take to make it a hyper coaster. But hey, it's still a really good ride. The first drop is great. You have really good inversions. That Cobra roll is actually insane. it's so whippy no matter where you sit. I sat in the front row both of my rides, but I've seen a lot of POVs of the back row, and definitely looks a little bit rougher, so that's why I didn't ride it in the back row, rode it in the front row. And for me, it's definitely a front row ride because it's really fun, very intense. Like when you get into that mid-course, that's a really intense like turn to get into the mid-course, very whippy too. And you just need a breath because it's so intense, but really, really fun, really good theming, and it's a very good inverted coaster. At my number 4 spot, we have the other park's indoor coaster, Verbolten. This is very fun. It is very different from dark coasters, so you're not gonna have the same experience. It is so fun. Like the surprise element when you're in the indoor section, I'm not gonna tell you what it is because you guys are just gonna have to go out and ride for yourself because I'm not gonna spoil it. That is crazy. Like that is just an insane element, but I'm not gonna tell you. And the launches are really cool. Especially my favorite part of the ride is either the surprise element or when you launch out of the indoor section because that's just so cool. And then you have the bridge, such cool views of Pantheon and even like that entire Fiesta Italia side of the park. Like it's so cool. Such a good coaster. Wouldn't say that there's a lot of airtime except for the surprise element, which has a lot of airtime. Not gonna tell you what it is, but it does have a lot of airtime. That's your clue. So it's just such a fun coaster, not intense. And I mean, I could see people thinking it's intense because the only intense part is the indoor section because those helixes, they're pretty intense to be honest, but such a good ride. At my number 3 spot, we have the park's dive coaster, Griffin. This was such a fun coaster. It's pretty intense too, if you ask me, because the Immelman right after the drop, I grayed out, and you can see I said it in my on-ride reaction. I definitely did gray out because that was a very intense moment. Now the second time I rode it, and it was at night, and I didn't gray out, surprisingly. I don't know why, but I didn't. But it's such a fun ride. The splashdown is really cool. You don't get wet, so I know with SheiKra at Busch Gardens Tampa that if you stand, not when you're on the ride, but if you stand next to where the splashdown is, you will get wet. But I haven't been there, but I just know that from my vlogs and stuff. But with Griffin, you're not gonna get wet. Now, I know I actually did kind of feel like a sprinkle when we went into the splashdown. I don't know if it was just me thinking, like imagining that it was water, but I don't know, I kind of felt something. But such a fun dive coaster, definitely my favorite dive coaster. The drop is crazy, especially the lift hill is so steep. It is so cool, such a fun ride. At my number 2 spot, we have the first ever B&M Hypercoaster, Apollo's Chariot. This was such a fun B&M Hypercoaster. The drop is so cool. I haven't been on a hypercoaster like that has the pre-dip of a drop. That was such a cool drop. Probably my favorite drop on any B&M Hypercoaster that I've ridden. It's so fun. You get some really good airtime if you're in the back row. And even if you're in the front row, it's a really weird sensation that when you're going down the drop. Now, it's kind of like this with like any other B&M Hypercoaster, but I have only experienced that on Apollo, and it's really cool. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it kind of just feels like you're going steeper and steeper, which you are, but it's just different from the other B&M Hypercoasters when you're in the front row. Now, I don't know how to explain it, kind of like what I felt, but you're gonna have to go out and ride it yourself and kind of see what I mean in the front row. But I definitely think it's a back row ride. Now, since it was the first ever B&M Hypercoaster and it was built in 1999, it does have a little bit more of a rattle than the other B&M Hypercoasters, but it's really not that bad. Like when you watch like POVs and stuff, it looks a little bit worse than it actually is in real life. In real life, it's butter smooth. Really cool ride. I really love Apollo's Chariot. Very graceful. It goes around the water, like so cool. And that drop right before the pictures were taken, so unexpected. Like you wouldn't think that you'd get that much airtime, but yeah, such a fun B&M Hypercoaster. We have made it to my number 1 coaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and I think you can guess it. My number 1 coaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg is Pantheon. This was such a crazy ride. If you look at my first ride reaction, you will see that I am just so surprised. The airtime you get on the hills where the launches are, crazy. Like, especially when you're going backwards into that spike. It is just insanely good airtime. Like, probably one of the most ejector airtime I've ever experienced on a roller coaster. It is just awesome. And that top hat is so cool. So cool. the 95-degree jump, oh my gosh, like it's just a crazy ride. When you're on the top hat, you also get a really good view of the park. Like, it's just so cool. They got the overbank, crazy. Stall, crazy. You know, even that overbank before you hit the brakes, crazy. Everything on that ride is actually insane. Such a fun coaster. Definitely, if you go to Busch Gardens Williamsburg, that is a must-do. Like, if you don't ride it, unless it's closed, like, what are you doing? It's such a fun ride. Even if you're scared, you gotta ride it. It's just such a good coaster. I will be putting out a full review a little bit later, but it's just such a good ride. Can't say it enough times. It's just definitely the #1 coaster, in my opinion, at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. That is all of the roller coasters at Busch Gardens Williamsburg ranked. I hope you enjoyed this video. Now, Busch Gardens Williamsburg as a park is such a good park. Definitely my favorite park. Definitely beats out all the theming elements of all the other parks I've been to. It's just so good, so good. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye, guys.